Dad's 32-year-old wife banned me from Christmas. So I sent her to jail. My father's wife called me 3 days before Christmas and said, "Mark, you can't come to the house this year. Your aura is simply too heavy for the sanctuary we're building." She said it with a calm, breathy voice, the kind you hear on a meditation app, while she was effectively banning me from the home I grew up in. "What do you mean, heavy aura?" I asked, gripping my phone so hard my knuckles turned white. "It's Christmas. Dad and I have a tradition. We watch It's a Wonderful Life and drink scotch. Robert has moved past those lower vibration habits," she replied. "He's on a cleanse. And frankly, your skepticism blocks his chakras. We need this holiday to focus on his rebirth." Serena was 32 years old. I was 34. My father, Robert, was 72. She had been my stepmother for exactly 4 months. "Put Dad on the phone," I demanded. There was a pause, a rustling of fabric, and then a muffled sound. "He's in a deep restorative state right now, Mark. I won't disturb him. We'll send you a gift. Namaste." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, the silence ringing in my ears. It wasn't just the rejection. It was the gatekeeping. For the last 2 months, every time I called, Dad was resting, meditating, or detoxing. I hadn't spoken to him for more than 5 minutes since Thanksgiving, where he looked thin and strangely pale, sipping a green sludge Serena called Vitality Broth, while refusing the turkey he used to love. I drove to my sister Claire's apartment immediately. Claire was a corporate attorney, and while she had initially tried to be supportive of Dad's second wind romance, she had grown quiet lately. When I told her about the Christmas ban, she didn't yell. She just walked to her home office and pulled a file from her desk. "I was going to wait until after the holidays to show you this," she said, her voice shaking. "But if she's cutting us off, we don't have time." She slid a printout across the desk. It was a property record from the Collier County Clerk's office in Florida. "Look at the date," Claire said. The document was a quitclaim deed for our family's vacation home in Naples. A property Dad had bought 30 years ago, the place we'd spent every summer. The deed transferred ownership from Robert J. Sterling to Lotus and Light Holdings, LLC. The date was 3 weeks ago. "I looked up the LLC," Claire said, her eyes hard. "It was incorporated in Delaware a month ago. The sole managing member is Serena Vane." My stomach dropped. That house was worth $2 million. It was supposed to be the bulk of the inheritance Dad always talked about leaving us, but more importantly, it was his pride and joy. He'd always said he wanted to die on that lanai looking at the Gulf. "He signed it over?" I asked, looking at the signature. It looked like Dad's handwriting, but shaky. "Weak. There's more," Claire said. "I have a friend at the bank where Dad keeps his primary checking. He couldn't give me specifics because of privacy laws, but he flagged unusual activity informally. He asked if Dad was traveling because there have been max limit cash withdrawals every day for 2 weeks. I felt a cold sweat break out on my neck. This wasn't just a midlife crisis or a trophy wife situation. This was a liquidation. "We have to go over there," I said. "Right now." Claire shook her head. "If we just barge in, she'll play the victim. She'll tell the police we're harassing them. She's already planting the seeds, Mark. She told Aunt Linda that you and I are toxic and only care about money. If we go in screaming about the house, we prove her point. So what? We let her steal everything." "No," Claire said. "We get evidence that she's a fraud. If she's doing this to Dad, she's done it before. People like this don't start with a $2 million heist." We spent the next 48 hours doing things that felt like a violation of privacy but were necessary for survival. I hired a private investigator named Miller, a guy my firm used for background checks. He was expensive and fast. While Miller dug into Serena Vane's past, I went back through my text history with Dad. I noticed a pattern. The texts from him used to be short, full of typos, and signed "Love, Dad." Starting about 3 months ago, the texts became flowery. They used words like alignment and journey. "I am taking space to heal my inner child." My father was a retired structural engineer who thought manifesting was a shipping term. He didn't write those texts. Miller called us on Christmas Eve morning. "Her name isn't Serena Vane," he said. "It's Sandra Wojcik. She changed it legally 5 years ago in Arizona. Before that, she was in Sedona. There was a civil suit regarding an elderly man she was caring for. He had mild dementia. She convinced him to invest $200,000 in a holistic healing center that never broke ground. The family settled out of court to keep it quiet, but she signed a non-disclosure agreement. Is she wanted? I asked. No criminal record that stuck, Miller said. She walks the line. She gets them to sign things willingly. It's undue influence, moral coercion, but hard to prove as theft. But here's the kicker. She's still legally married to a guy in Nevada. A guy named Trent. They never filed divorce papers. That was it. Bigamy. It was the lever we needed. We drove to Dad's house at 4 p.m. on Christmas Eve. The driveway was full of contractor vans. I recognized a landscaping company and a pool remodeling service. She's spending the cash, Claire whispered as we walked up the path. Renovating a house she doesn't own yet to increase the value for when she flips it. I knocked. I didn't wait for an answer. I used my key. The lock stuck, she changed the deadbolt. I rang the bell, pounding on the wood. Serena opened it, wearing white linen flowing pants and a look of practiced serenity that barely covered her irritation. Mark. Claire. I told you Robert needs. Cut the crap, Sandra, I said, stepping into the doorway so she couldn't close it. Her eyes flickered, a micro-expression of panic before the mask slid back into place. I don't know who that is. You are trespassing. You are upsetting the energy of this home. We're here to see our father, Claire said, holding up a manila envelope. And we're here to talk about Trent. Serena froze. She didn't move, but she didn't block us anymore. We pushed past her into the living room. The house smelled like sage and something cloyingly sweet, masking the scent of stale air. The furniture, Mom's antique armchairs, the heavy oak dining table was gone, replaced by white beanbag chairs and low bamboo tables. Dad, I called out. He's in the sunroom, Serena hissed, following us. He's fragile. If you cause him a cardiac event, that is on your karma. We found him lying on a chaise lounge. He looked terrible. His skin was gray, his eyes sunken. He was wrapped in a weighted blanket, staring at the ceiling. Dad. I knelt beside him. He blinked slowly, like he was moving through water. Mark? His voice was a rasp. Serena said you guys were angry. Said you didn't want to come. That's a lie, Dad, I said, taking his hand. It was ice cold. She told us not to come. She said our aura was bad. Dad frowned, confused. She said, you called and yelled. Said you hated the changes. He looked at Serena, who was standing in the doorway, her arms crossed. Serena, they are confusing you, Robert, Serena said, her voice sharp now. They are here for the money. They found out about the Florida house and now they're here to attack me. I told you this would happen. Material attachments bring suffering. The Florida house? Dad asked, trying to sit up. What about it? She transferred the deed, Dad, Claire said, stepping forward. 3 weeks ago. To an LLC she controls. You don't own the Naples house anymore. Dad shook his head. No, I signed. Those were papers for the retreat permit. For the backyard. Look at this. Claire showed him the copy of the deed. Dad squinted at it, his hands trembling. Lotus and Light Holdings? I didn't know. Robert, we discussed this. Serena interrupted, her voice dropping to that hypnotic, low register. We talked about releasing your burdens. Property is a burden. I am managing it for our future. For the foundation. And what about Trent? I asked, turning to face her. Is he part of the foundation too? Serena's face went white. Who is Trent? Dad asked, looking between us. The fog in his eyes was clearing, replaced by fear. Her husband, I said. Her current legal husband in Nevada. Which means your marriage to her is void, Dad. She's not your wife. She's a con artist named Sandra Vojak who did this to a guy in Sedona 5 years ago. Serena lunged. It wasn't a physical attack, but a verbal explosion. The Namaste act vanished instantly. You ungrateful, spoiled brats, she screamed. I take care of him. I blend his smoothies. I monitor his blood pressure. You threw him away in a big empty house. He loves me. I monitor his blood pressure, Claire repeated slowly. She looked at the side table. There were bottles of herbal supplements with handwritten labels. No prescription bottles. Dad, where is your heart medication? Your beta blockers. Serena said. The toxins? Dad mumbled, clutching his chest. She said the pharmaceuticals were blocking my chi. We switched to natural. Call 911, Claire yelled at me. Right now. No. Serena tried to grab my phone. I shoved her back, harder than I intended. She stumbled into one of her bamboo tables. "Get out," I told her. "Get out of this house before the cops get here, and maybe we won't press charges for attempted manslaughter." "I have rights," she shrieked. "I have residency. You have a bigamy charge and practicing medicine without a license," I said, dialing. "And we have a recording of you admitting you took him off his heart meds." I didn't actually have that recording yet, but the bluff landed. She saw the look on my face, the look on Claire's face, and the devastation on Dad's. She realized the game was over. She ran to the bedroom, and we heard the sound of drawers being ripped open. By the time the paramedics arrived, Serena was gone. She'd taken her jewelry box and the cash stash she kept in the kitchen, but she left the expensive healing crystals. The paramedics took Dad's vitals. His blood pressure was dangerously high, nearing hypertensive crisis. They loaded him into the ambulance. I rode with him. Claire stayed behind to meet the police and secure the house. Dad spent Christmas Day in the cardiac unit. He was hooked up to monitors, finally back on his real medication. The doctors said another week of the herbal regimen and the stress of the cleanse, which was essentially starvation, could have caused a massive stroke. We sat by his bed, watching It's a Wonderful Life on a tablet. "I felt so old," Dad whispered during a commercial break. He wasn't looking at us. He was looking at his 4-line. "She made me feel relevant, like I had a second chance to be someone else. Someone younger." "I know, Dad," I said. "That's how they work. They sell you a dream where you aren't lonely." "I signed everything she put in front of me," he admitted, tears leaking from the corners of his eyes. "I just wanted to make her happy so she wouldn't leave. I thought, if I gave her control, she'd take care of me." "She was taking care of herself," Claire said gently. "But we fixed it. The lawyer says since the marriage wasn't legal, the deed transfer is fraudulent. We can unwind it. It's going to be a mess, but we can fix it." The fallout took months. Serena, or Sandra, was picked up in New Mexico 2 weeks later trying to cross the border with a trunk full of designer bags and cash. It turned out she had drained about $150,000 from Dad's accounts before we stopped her, mostly through those daily cash withdrawals and consulting fees paid to her shell company. We recovered the Florida house, though the legal fees were substantial. The renovations she had started were mostly demolition. We had to pay thousands to fix the damage she'd done to the property. But the hardest part wasn't the money. It was the shame. Dad didn't want to see his friends. He didn't want to go to the club. He felt like a fool who had fallen for the oldest trick in the book. 3 months later, I went over to his house for dinner. The bamboo furniture was gone. The white beanbags were in the trash. We had dragged Mom's old dining table back from the garage. Dad was cooking actual food, a roast chicken with potatoes. He looked healthier, though the spark in his eyes was dimmer than it used to be. "I got a letter today," Dad said, putting a plate in front of me. "From the district attorney. She took a plea deal. 3 years. "That's good," I said. "It's over." Dad sat down. He poured 2 glasses of wine. A nice Cabernet, not green juice. "You know, Mark," he said, looking around the room, "when she told you not to come for Christmas, I almost let her. I almost listened. I was so afraid of negative energy that I almost cut off the only people who actually gave a damn about whether I lived or died." "But you didn't," I said. "You asked about us. You hesitated. That's why we knew something was wrong." He nodded slowly. "I checked the Florida house today. I'm thinking of going down there for a month. Alone. Just to sit on the lanai." "You should," I said. "The energy down there is pretty good." He laughed. A dry, rusty sound, but it was real. We ate in silence for a while, the empty chair at the table no longer feeling like a void, but like a space that belonged to us again. I learned that day that protecting your parents is a strange reversal of nature. You spend your whole life looking up to them, expecting them to know the answers, and then one day you realize they are just people, lonely, fallible, and capable of being broken. And sometimes you have to be the one to kick down the door and drag them back into the light.